TV channel. We are back after a 2-hour break. We were planning to work a little bit longer with you, but the airstrikes even took some of our time. Irena Kapitan and Stanislav Kosuchkar here with you, and we are waiting for our guest. In the meantime, we showed some videos. Our guest will be the head of the regional head of Prenatal Center. I'd like to thank our viewers a lot. We've known each other for quite a long time. So, what about the brownie? So, nobody owes anyone anything. No, it's a different thing. So, Vlad was supposed to show a new recipe for brownies. Yesterday, I was coming back home and I saw Vlad leaving my place. So, he brought the brownies, but on one condition, that I take them to the studio this morning. So, I'd like to thank Vlad. Stanislav kept his promise to deliver the brownies. They are extremely delicious. We also gave some more to our colleagues, and we are waiting for you to make some more brownies. You can give them to us. So there was some additional benefit from this airstrike siren. We had a chance to have some brownies. Reports coming in about being bombarded is wrong. Everything is quiet here. Everything is okay. Everything works. So don't worry and don't spread the information that something was bombarded or shelled unless it's presented in the official sources. And unlike the Ivano-Frankivsk city mayor, please don't film anything. And it was very hard for the adjusters to adjust the fire without such videos. So we informed our viewers that at 12 p.m. our journalist talked to the state emergency service asking them whether anything happened in Lviv. They replied that no. So the information about the bombardment of Lviv airport are false. Everything was quiet. Most likely the airstrike siren happened here because there was something in Lutsk and in Ivano-Frankivsk. We have wonderful viewers. One of our viewers watching us right now received a message in one of the groups. It is about collecting personal data, people asking for you to provide your email. On no occasion should you provide your personal information. This is the way for the enemy to get access to our personal data, our emails, so that they can spread information on our behalf. Please don't circulate such information. There were proposals to rent accounts of actual people so that disinformation could be spread from those accounts. Do not spread such information. Do not sell your emails because that can be costly, not just financially. Somebody can lose their life. While staying in the bomb shelter, we were receiving information from our colleagues and friends, and Stanislav had time to go to the barber shop. That's just the proof that businesses are working. So he went to the barber shop after the airstrike siren went out. So we are currently hearing those messages that there are streets cruising the streets of Lviv asking about the addresses for military objects because they want allegedly to bring food and some supplies there. But this is quite suspicious because we have people from other cities of Ukraine here in the city. We are talking to other people from other cities, and similar information is being circulated in public groups in Lviv. Most likely this is a piece of fake news, but we will try and find out whether we've had cases like that in Lviv. In Lviv region, the military administration is following all these cases, but we can see that when the enemy cannot do anything with strength, they are including the information channels. And our intelligence is reporting that Putin is planning a terror act at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. He has already ordered a terror act on the territory of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The NNP is not being monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. The power has been cut off at the nuclear power plant, and there's 48 hours before the support systems will go off. The occupiers have refused to give Ukrainian maintenance people access to the territory, but there are Belarus specialists on the territory. They present themselves as the employees. Also, there are Russian saboteurs on the territory. Several days ago, there were strikes at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and also Kharkiv Physical and Technical Institute in order to imitate the involvement of the Ukrainian military in the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. They are trying to create fake proof to prove their version. So, in the area of the Antonov airport in Hostomel, Russian refrigerators were noticed. So, not seeing the result from ground forces operations and negotiations, Russia is ready to blackmail the entire international community. Ukraine, the world, and Russia itself understand that the statements about Ukraine doing something like that are fake, but still, such actions on the part of Putin will have catastrophic consequences for the entire world. The demands of the dictator cannot be completed. Putin still terrorizes the entire world with the terror attacks on the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Let's not forget that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is also controlled by the occupiers, and the Russian mercenaries also bombed the Kakhovka dam. We understand why they did that, to terrorize Ukrainians so that Ukrainian military men cannot get to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I think that this is something that will be discussed actively by Putin and Lukashenko, as you know. Today in Moscow, maybe it's not in Moscow, but Lukashenko and Putin are having their meeting. Putin will be meeting his main minion, and I believe that they will be discussing this issue. We would like to learn the information from the Belarus sources on whether there's any information available, but Minister Fedorov just outdid himself, and I cannot have access to any Belarus website, any government websites, just to see what they're writing about. So I'm expecting information from Ukrainian sources, from Ukrainian journalists who have access to the information, or those journalists who are staying in Belarus and who have some information. In Sumy region, the police and the locals captured 29 occupiers who were wandering somewhere in the field. They got lost. They used their maps to get to the border, but the locals noticed those guys. They appeared suspicious, and it turned out those were Russian military men. This is informed by the press service of the National Police of Ukraine. The soldiers were detained in one of the villages. It was done by the locals of Rovenshtchina. The police people responded and they took the occupiers, and it remains to be seen whether they were involved in committing crimes, and most likely they were, so the decisions on their future will be made. So if they committed crimes against territorial integrity and sovereignty, that's one thing, and killing people, that's the other thing. Operative Commandment North reports that 5 inhabited settlements were cleared from the occupiers. I like how they are working. Yesterday, they destroyed a number of invaders and they recaptured a tank. They have liberated 5 inhabited settlements in Chernihiv area. So you need to understand that there are no green corridors happening in Chernihiv region, and it was confirmed even yesterday that this is not up for debate because Ukrainian military are now doing the clearance. After that, there will be evacuation happening. When we speak about Chernihiv, it is important to understand that we are repelling a large number of Russian forces from Kyiv, preventing them from blocking the city of Kyiv from the side of Chernihiv. So that is why we can understand why they want to do something in Chernobyl. And if Lukashenko has at least some reason left, he needs to realize that he will be the first one who will also suffer from anything that will happen at Chernobyl nuclear power plant. According to Alexei Kuleba, the head of Kyiv regional military administration, there was a missile attack on Bereshivka, which destroyed infrastructure and residential areas. An apartment block for 60 apartments was hit. 4 apartment blocks, smaller apartment blocks, and 10 individual houses were destroyed. There are no victims. It's good that people were evacuated so that we have less casualties in the war zone. We also have interesting information. I'm reminding you that today Putin is meeting the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, and yesterday we had a meeting of the ministers of foreign affairs of Ukraine, Russia, with the participation of the Turkish minister, and it's become known that the former German Chancellor Schröder, who is quite close to Russia, and many of his followers are currently members of the German government. So Schröder had a meeting with Putin on Thursday. He met him as asked by the Ukrainian party. This is reported by German media outlets, some of them quite credible, and they are saying that when there was the meeting in Turkey, the meeting of the ministers in Turkey, there was one of the negotiators of the Ukrainian party present there, Rustam Umerov, and he asked his acquaintances to approach Schröder and meet Putin, and Schröder flew to meet Putin, and there is proof of that. Schröder's wife put up a picture on Instagram proving their presence in Moscow. We don't know what the conversation was about, but this information is coming from 2 sources proving that the meeting did take place, and maybe it will take some time before we learn the information about that meeting. And we have a new address of the President of Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky. Free people of the free state, we are fighting for our freedom. It's day 16. It's 4 times as long as the enemy has planned for the invasion. 4 times as long against the army that was considered the mightiest in the world, that thought the Ukrainians would surrender, that thought somebody would be welcoming Russian flags on the Ukrainian streets with flowers on our streets. But Ukrainians have honor and dignity. We are protecting our land, and we will not surrender a single inch of our land to the invader. We will not surrender a single inch of our independence. I know that many people are starting to feel the fatigue. I understand you. I understand that you are emotional. Emotions can play a bad game with us. It's life. When we get mobilized, when we see our victories in the field, when we see the loss of the enemy, we expect that it will all come to an end sooner, that the occupiers will be defeated sooner. But this is life. This is fight. We still need some time. We need patience, we need reason, we need energy, we need the ability to do the best that we can, so that together we reach the victory. It's hard to say how many more days we will need to liberate our country, but what I can tell you, we will do it because we want to do it, because we have already achieved the strategic change towards our victory. This is the war for our motherland with a very persistent enemy that does not care for the thousands of its own soldiers that were killed, that are currently being collected in all parts of Russia, the reserve soldiers, the conscripts, who will be thrown into the mix of this war to fight against Ukrainians, mercenaries from Syria, the country that was destroyed by the invaders. They will come to Ukraine to fight against Chernihiv, Volnovakha, Izium. This is how the Russian army treats Ukrainians. This is how they treat Donbass. This is how they treat the Russian speakers. This is how they claimed about the protection in Moscow. Missiles, aviation bombs, artillery. Now Syrian mercenaries who don't even know what languages are spoken here, what religions are observed here, what politics are supported by the locals. These mercenaries just go to a foreign land to kill, to foreign land, alien land, in all respects. Over the last night, the occupiers demilitarized the water pipe in Chernihiv. So we're doing everything in our power to restore the water supply. In parts of Sumy, Kyiv and Donetsk region, there's no electricity. This problem with heating supply, it's a humanitarian catastrophe. A humanitarian catastrophe has become a synonym for the two other words, Russian Federation. At night, the invaders bombarded a shoe factory, an apartment block, a kindergarten in Dnipro. For what? How did those things threaten Russia? They destroyed residential buildings in the villages in Sumy region. They bombarded Lutsk, Ivano-Frankivsk. They continued bringing pain to Mariupol. If that's happening, it means that the sanctions against Russia are not enough. And we are expecting new sanction decisions from our partners. Russia should be paying for this atrocity, paying daily. Yesterday, there was a very important meeting of the heads of EU member states. It was a long meeting. We know that all the leaders spoke at those meetings. We know who supported us, who stayed quiet, who tried for the formulations to be underwhelming for the Ukrainian liberty. How do we assess the decision made? Very easy. It should be stronger. The sanctions should be stronger. And the moods, the opinions of the leaders should coincide with the moods inside the communities. In different countries, the numbers vary, but the surveys are there, the support is there. These 60% are in favor, and that's an overwhelming majority. 60% of Europeans want Ukraine to be part of the EU, and I'm sure that the people of Europe will deliver this message to their politicians. The decision of yesterday's EU meeting is now brought to specific implementation. The EU should be doing more for Ukraine and also for the EU itself. All European nations are expecting our government officials have organized 12 humanitarian corridors with food, water, drugs, Ізюм, Енергодар, Волнового, Буча, Гостомель, Бородянка, Андріївка, Микуличі, Макарів, Козановичі will be receiving the humanitarian support. Of course, Mariupol, Ukrainian military men are trying to ensure that the humanitarian corridors are working. And if the invaders continue their shelling and continue disrupting the evacuation of people, they will receive the response from the world, which will require for them to ask for humanitarian corridors. We want for the entire territory of Ukraine to have fuel, to have food, to have drugs, all the essentials that people may need. Gas, diesel, everything is being delivered. This morning during the video conference, I was asked a logical question. In view of spring, what will happen with the sowing period, especially in the occupied areas? The answer is simple. Across Ukraine, whatever happens this spring, we need to have a campaign for sowing as much seeds as possible, because it's about life. Life is the most important thing. It's about our life, our future, our dreams, and also our victory. I am repeating again and again, when we are defending independence, we have to be like an army. Everybody needs to do whatever is possible where they are staying to reach the result that we all deserve. To get victory, we need to stand, we need to fight, we need to give our all. With a neighbor like that, it will not be easy, but it won't be easy with us, as it has turned out. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to its heroes. We are back in the studio, Перший Західний. But before we start our conversation, I just want to inform you Vodafone is now working in Energodar, so you can try calling your relatives. Also, a call with people has left the city. People have passed the block post. Let's hope for no shelling and no provocations. There are some provocations near Izum. We were expecting that. Also, Zolote has been shelled. Zolote in Luhansk region. The shelling doesn't stop. There are some breaks for 20 minutes, so people are asked to stay in the bomb shelters. And now to some positive news. Operative Commandment North are reporting that anti-tank forces of one of the military units continue to be successful in Chernihiv direction, bringing losses to the enemy, including 9 tanks, IFVs, and other types of weapons. And in the morning, we forgot to remind you of the reserve numbers in case the main lines are not working. If you are watching us from the region, if you are watching from another region, go to the websites of your regional military administration. If we keep up the positive news, more than 4,000 people were born in Ukraine during the war. You've all seen the conditions, the bomb shelters, the basement. But luckily in Lviv Regional Prenatal Center, we don't have this type of situation. So here with us we have the manager of Lviv Regional Prenatal Center. Good morning, glory to Ukraine, glory to its heroes. It's the worst time for mothers in Ukraine. Having to give birth is already stressful enough, let alone hearing the sirens and having to get evacuated somewhere. afterwards. So the prenatal center is currently accepting those mothers who were fleeing from the territory of active fighting. How many patients like that do you have? We are working to full capacity. Of course, the number of patients from the east is increasing daily. So if we take to the statistics, we have more than 60 patients with us. We have had 30 deliveries. So patients are migrating to the west, and we see that this trend is for people to come here and stay for a couple of days before moving further to Poland and other countries abroad. People are afraid. There's uncertainty about the future. Before I was setting out to get to you, there was an air raid siren and we had to evacuate the pregnant women, so it adds to the physical and mental stress of the employees. Also, there is a difficult situation with children who cannot be evacuated because their lungs are being on artificial ventilation. So we've organized these wards. On the first floor, we have the windows protected with bags of sand, and we are hoping that the worst will not happen here. The worst, I mean, what recently happened in Mariupol, I think we will be able to avoid these atrocities. Coming back to Mariupol, we were telling the story of the famous blogger that was used by Russian media and Russian bloggers for their hate campaign. You may have seen this picture of a young woman leaving the Mariupol maternity clinic. She is indeed a blogger, and Russian media just developed the story that the pictures were staged, saying that she was just an actress playing the role, but the woman is indeed pregnant and she was hit by shrapnel. But the good thing is that she gave birth either today or yesterday. Let's hope that this will not take a toll on the health of her child, what she had to bear during the previous days. So what are the territories from which the patients are coming? Kyiv, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Luhansk, Kryvyi Rih, Zaporizhzhia. So practically, if we have a look at the map of the eastern regions, we have at least one woman coming from each of the regions. So again, we have more and more of them coming every day. So do they need the help of psychologists when they come to you, and do you provide such services? We have a staff psychologist, an in-house psychologist, but I can tell you that each OB-GYN is trying to coordinate the work, both medical and organizational, and we act as psychologists. So first, when you meet such patients, you need to calm them down, you need to tell them that it's safe here, and only then we start doing our work as doctors, do consultations, manipulations, whatever is necessary. It should go hand in hand, psychological and medical support. So most of women have anxiety, they feel panic because they are traveling for 2-3 days by trains, by cars, and they come here already feeling as if they are having some issues. Luckily, there are no issues with their health. We also see this trend from full premature birth, because this anxiety can trigger premature birth, and this is also additional stress for maternity clinics. Such kids require additional equipment and additional time to nurse them back to health, because we know that normal delivery is between 37 and 40 weeks. So we try and do everything possible for our pregnant women not to have premature births. So we are trying to do everything to complete this preventative care. So out of the 30 deliveries that you've accepted, what was the percentage of premature births? 10%. That's a lot. Yes, that's quite a lot. So we need to have information available to the pregnant women, and we as doctors also need to be aware. We have put up a post recommendations regarding anxiety, fear, rude behavior, and how to calm oneself down. You have to be as calm as possible because each pregnant woman realizes that she is responsible not just for herself but also for the child and the future of our nation. For the past 2 weeks, we've been saying that what Russia is doing, Russia and Putin are doing, is the genocide of Ukrainians. And the shots that were shown from Mariupol with the enemy bombarding the maternity clinic, I don't know how these women can be calmed down. And the evacuation that you are talking about, the kids' own support cannot be evacuated. So do you have a specific shelter or in cases of air raid sirens which have beds? Yes, we have 2 shelters prepared, one for one unit and one for the second unit, so that the distance is smaller. So the shelter in one of the buildings has beds, has respirators, so it's been adjusted for any urgent manipulations. We hope that we will not have to use it, but we are going to prepare another shelter which will be even more adjusted for the challenges of today. It's clear that during this time, a woman requires as much support as possible. During COVID, it was prohibited to have men present during labor. Have these limitations been lifted? Partner delivery is being allowed. The support of the family, the support of the husband is very important. We have very many women who don't have the support of relatives because they came here by themselves. Their husbands stayed back. Others had to stay back for other reasons, not being military men. So we are trying to pay attention to each woman coming from the East to give them psychological and medical support so that they have comfortable delivery and they are discharged happily from the hospital, if we can say so. At least they stay in peace during this dangerous period. So what is the total amount of women that you can accommodate during the most critical period? We have 250 beds in our prenatal center, which will be insured, so those will be supplied to the pregnant women. I know that you want to ask a question. You asked it to Oris Chimris, and I have to ask this question again. So if there's nowhere to go after the discharge, if there's no home, if there's no place in those general places for accommodation, yes, there are some other options. We are discussing that with all the women and some of the pregnant ladies who don't have a place to stay. We suggest that they stay at the prenatal center before the delivery. We are also observing them in the meantime. So they are coming here after a long travel, and it's necessary to observe how the child feels after the stress that women get on the trains. We know that the transportation these days is complicated, so this is something that we discussed with each woman. But this is additional load on the employees. Our staff are very understanding. Everybody is trying to be involved during this complicated period and contribute in their own way so that the peace comes here as soon soon as possible. I have another question. I don't remember the dates. Do you remember your date of birth? Yes, I do. So we were talking about the breast milk bank. I think that in stressful situations it will be very needed. Yes, that is something that we will for sure need. But the heads of the region, even in private conversations, we discussed that recently. Today we are feeling a strong need, and even in the future, when the war is over, it will be our first task. With the support of our foreign colleagues, we have many foundations joining in. Many of the partners are asking us what we need, so we are telling them that this is a reanimation card, this is a breast milk bank. This is something that we will need. A reanimation card would be necessary for children born in the region. So we can even create some humanitarian corridors with other regions to pick people from there. It's very important. And we hope that in the nearest future we will be able to ensure all these opportunities with the support of the heads of regions and also our partners. I'm going to disclose a secret to you. On the 26th of February, 2 days after the start of the invasion, there was supposed to be an auction which was to take place at the Prenatal Center, and I was a little bit involved in that. It was a charitable auction, and it was based on selling some paintings of famous artists. It took us a lot of time to prepare the auction. It was postponed because of COVID. The second time it was postponed to February the 26th. And when I received the phone call on the 24th that the war started, it was the first thing that I thought about. How come the auction will not take place? So I'm just thinking about reanimation vehicle and coordination between regions. So the women coming to you come here privately, so they are leaving their homes behind. Do you have contacts with other prenatal centers? If something is happening in Kryvyi Rih or in Dnipro and they want to evacuate women from prenatal centers, if those are the final months of the pregnancy and the women are being observed at the hospital. So do you receive such calls? Yes, we received calls from Kyiv. They told us that they were preparing evacuation, asking us if we could accept the women. Some women got here, others did not. These are all technicalities which are hard to organize. There are different itineraries, different opportunities, and different corridors. You can see that there's disruption in the work of those corridors. We get phone calls to our work phones, and we are trying to be there 24/7 and accept women. Last weekend, I received phone calls. We were working even during the weekend, and I received a phone call from a woman leaving Dnipro, and she asked us whether we could accept her, and we told her that of course we would be waiting for her. There are different calls that we are receiving. I think that no clinic would turn down anyone in Lviv. You remember the international partners? Are they calling you? Are they offering any help to women who have already given birth? Are they offering to take even the pregnant women? Yes, yesterday I received a phone call from Poland. 3 buses were leaving from Lviv today, and they were offering going to pick up the pregnant women. Yes, there are phone calls and they are helping, asking for our needs. The Israeli hospital, which will be deployed in Mostaiska, they thought that maybe there will be something for the pregnant women. They will be bringing their equipment. No, we have not received any calls from this clinic. And also near King Cross, Leopolis, there will be a hospital set up by American professionals, and the women who are staying in Lviv can have consultations, OB/GYN consultations. You also have a gynecology department at your center. Can regular women also ask for an appointment? Yes. Consultations, outpatient treatment is available. All planned surgical interventions have been terminated, but emergency conditions, dangerous pregnancies, we are ready to accept women. Threats to pregnancies during early periods, these are all gynecological issues, bleedings, any emergency conditions. We have patients like that approaching us, but again, I'm informing and stressing on this that the opportunity is there and the conditions are there. When the patients flee the regions of active fighting and they have no documents, how is this process controlled? We provide the healthcare services and only later we go and check the documents. We realize that the situation may have been like that the person was unable to pick up the documents or they got lost on the way. The most important thing is to take care of the health first, and then we will try and do the things with the documents. As far as registration is concerned, can kids be registered at the maternity clinic? We provide all the conclusions in paper format. If the registries start working, we will be able to do the registration. So since the beginning of the war, that's how we have been doing. Alright, so is there anything that people can help you with that you need? That please. So we have a stock of drugs for 2.5 months, and let's hope it will be enough for us, and then we'll start our regular procurement. But we understand that children's intensive care is something that requires drugs and equipment, and we are saying that we have more premature births, and we are trying to plan ahead. And when talking to international companies and foundations, we are discussing things for intensive care, respirators, CPAPs, where a child can stay for a month and a half. So we are thinking about strategic things, which we will not be using only during wartime, but also during peaceful times, so that we get modern approach to health care. So we are talking about evacuation of companies from the war zone, but we also need to think, I will not be able to repeat the names of those machines and equipment that you've mentioned, but it's also possible that we evacuate the equipment from those prenatal centers. It's something that cannot be easily sold on the market, so why not evacuate those pieces of equipment? So the women who have arrived here, can they approach the regional prenatal center only, or can they go to other maternity clinics? They can go to any maternity clinic. So So people staying in Самбір, Бостон, near Lviv, especially during the first week, they were looking for places which had vacant spots. So each district has a maternity clinic, and if you need some consultations, if you have a question to ask, you can just ask for an appointment at the place where you're staying. We also have another location in the city center, Korolenka 9. We have endocrinologists, therapists, gynecologists there. They work 8 to 8 on a daily basis. Outpatient treatment may be received at Korolenka 9. We have city maternity clinics. There are very many opportunities. I think that now on Facebook, all the contact phones are available. Even without the phone call, you can come to the admission support. I also have another question. I will not be trying and scare you, but we are in the hard times, post-war times. So what was the situation like with births? So after the war, there will be a decline in births. So over the past 3 to 4 years, there's been a trend to the decline, and after the war, the numbers will be even worse. But again, many people who have been postponing pregnancy because there's been issues with infertility, and now there's no opportunity to have examinations. Pregnancy should be planned, so the pregnancies don't arrive easily during stressful time, and let's hope that the war is over, and in spring all the women are pregnant and we have more babies born in autumn and winter. So the highest numbers of babies born are in autumn and in spring. So it's a good sign that next year we will have many more children born, and Ukraine will be full of kids. So after the victory is won, you will have a lot of work to do. Yes, we hope that it will be like that. We have 2 more questions. So we saw those shots from the Kyiv bomb shelter and the Kyiv underground. One of my acquaintances gave birth in the Kyiv underground. So how complicated is it, especially for those who have already given birth, and you know that there should be equipment? So how do deliveries happen under such circumstances? I know that 200 years ago, this is how women gave birth. This is an urgent situation. You are looking for everything that you can find around. Physiological delivery is the easiest thing, but if there is some equipment or if decisions are to be made about C-section, this may be a threat to the life of the woman and child. Thanks God, it happens in a more physiological way, and the doctors help only slightly. The women work together with the doctors, and it's as successful as possible. Let's hope that we have no more cases like that and women give birth to their kids at the hospitals according to the protocols. So do you remember the statistics? So out of the 30 deliveries, did you have any twins? Yes, 2 twins, because Stanislav cannot understand how can we have 34 kids born out of 30 deliveries. Do we have more boys or more girls? More boys. I was paying attention to the numbers. I received this question already, so more boys. Let's not hope that this is the statistics caused by war. This is the statistics that victory is coming. Let's hope that women are able to give birth, not in the bomb shelters, not during evacuations, not during some substandard situations. Thank you for finding the time to show up here between the deliveries. Maria Malachitska, head of the Regional Prenatal Center. Thank you to you. I wish you to have a fruitful day and more positive news. So positive news from healthcare. On the 7th of March, the doctors of the First Territorial Medical Union transplanted 2 kidneys from a donor, saving 2 lives, a 19-year-old girl from Ivano-Frankivsk and a 37-year-old woman. The donor was a 40-year-old man who got to Ivano-Frankivsk hospital with a stroke. He could not be saved, and when he was declared brain dead, his wife agreed to donate his organs. And we are expressing gratitude for this important decision. The surgeries were completed by 2 teams of transplantologists in Kyiv. So these types of surgeries are now taking place, and it's very important that lives are saved during such an important time. Today we were discussing strikes in Dnipro, Lutsk and Ivano-Frankivsk. We have a commentary from the journalist in Dnipro, and we also have the video of the bombardment of Dnipro. We heard the first explosion when we as journalists received information. There's been confirmation of several explosions. The emergency service informs that they are taking people out from under the rubble. There's one person who's been hurt. We don't know who that is. We know that in the nearby buildings, the windows have been shattered. People are asked to leave, and the windows have been shattered at the executive committee. And the municipal services are now solving this problem, as reported by the Department of Housing, and the mayor is informing that they missed the mark. We are not going to be disclosing this information. This is not a military object. Everything is quiet for the moment. We are currently having an air raid siren, and I'm staying in the basement together with my colleagues.
Повертаємося у прямий ефір, допоки
Back in the studio, and while the armed forces of Ukraine are destroying the invaders, and the locals in the meantime are trying to capture the territorial defense, are capturing the invaders somewhere in the field. So due to not indifferent people of Romanshchina, 29 invaders were captured. They noted some suspicious people, and now we know that these are invaders currently being interviewed about their crimes. Since day one, we have been reporting of some suspicious schemes on how to cross the borders. So the price was between $3,000 and $7,000 for men aged 18 and 60 to leave the territory of Ukraine. The State Border Service of Ukraine reports that the con men just took advantage of the other con men, selling two men born in 1991 and 1992 fake permits who wanted to leave the territory of Ukraine. They presented fake certificates of military men saying they were not fit for service, and the owners confessed that they bought the certificates for $500 each in the city of Odessa, and the documents bought by the two young men do not give them the right to cross the border, and now the two men will be held responsible. According to the criminal code of Ukraine, we have information about the meeting that we are closely following today. So Putin and Lukashenko met in Moscow. There's even a picture of that meeting. We don't know whether it's been edited or not. The table is small, not a long one. And the table between these two terrorists, that's the best word that I can come up with. So what they discussed, Putin was even showing Lukashenko some maps and said that the armed forces of Ukraine attacked first, and so that is Lukashenko who said that. So they had to respond to the shooting of the armed forces of Ukraine. So the puzzle doesn't fit. On the one hand, he says that Belarus is not engaged in this war, and when meeting his friend Putin, he says that they were just acting in response. And also those who participate in the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia allegedly informed him about some positive change. He said he was reported about these changes, and Putin informed Lukashenko about these changes. There's no additional information available, just this picture of them exchanging niceties. So there are the first 3 minutes of a video available, but there's no point in having a look at them. They exchange their lies. One said that there are some positive changes, and Lukashenko lied that Ukraine was the first to start shooting, and they alleged they had to respond. So, had we had access to the government website of Belarus, but unfortunately we don't have it, we would have known more. So, who is blocking the access? We would have probably had more information from those websites, but at the same time, we know that the Belarus state channels are not showing the truth, but it's easy to tell the truth from the lies. At the moment, there's no additional information. The meeting took place. They exchanged lies, and that's it. This information from the opposition media of Belarus. They also discussed the referendum, and Lukashenko allegedly has a dialogue with his people. Putin congratulated Lukashenko with the referendum, the high voter turnout, and the high levels of support on the part of the Belarus people. So they are trying to show that they have the support of the people. They also discussed the sanctions because it's a painful issue for sanctions. All these sanctions for Belarus were mitigated by the Russian oil dollars. And Putin also reminded that the USSR used to live under sanctions, and that is probably the key point of the visit. Lukashenko wanted to find out whether money will be given to him. It's the beginning of the year. All the programs for Belarus were shut down. Some people left the country, the opposition. Some started supporting the economy less. The IT sphere is not working, and those left are having some sabotage. And if the money is taken from them, they will resist. And Lukashenko knows that there's no 67% of support that he had 2 years ago during the elections, and his actual support levels are 5%. So it's a very important period for him. Choose one chair instead of two. And regarding the sanctions, they had the conversation. Lukashenko said that since World War II and the USSR, the two countries are used to living under sanctions. Let's see how used they are. It's not just the European countries, but also the US and Canada that can impose even more sanctions. The EU has transferred the first 300 million euros in microfinancial support, as reported by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. To quote her, the war of Putin is pressuring the free and dignified people of Ukraine. Europe is standing with Ukraine. She states that this is the first transfer in the bulk for 1.2 billion euros. So Ursula von der Leyen says that even more money will be transferred. So it would be nice if all the Russian assets in Europe were seized and transferred to Ukraine instead. So there's an issue here. There are two components to this support. The first half comes on an unconditional basis. The second part will come after Ukraine has confirmed with some negotiations. Mikhailo Podolyak confirms our forecast and the things that we constantly repeat in the studio, so our forecast can be equated with official information from the advisor. So he says that officials of the Russian Federation, including the Defense Minister Shoigu, have announced recruiting of 16,000 former ISIS fighters to be used against the civilians in Ukraine. We also said that the mercenaries are not that easy to come by, and this is their way of counteracting our international legion made up of 20,000 people. And what is funny is that Russia allegedly fought against ISIS, so most likely these will be former Syrian military men provided by Bashar Assad as cannon fodder to fight against the civilians and not think about the consequences. The head of the armed forces of Ukraine, the commander-in-chief, published the following statistics. Russia has launched 328 cruise missiles of Iskander and Caliber types. So this bloody crime of Putin's regime is a blatant violation of the international humanitarian law that needs international criminal court investigation. So there were 219 missile strikes against civilians because the Pentagon has been reporting about 700 missile strikes. So some of them hit military infrastructure, the others were repelled. So it's important that this information is being recorded so that we have an understanding of the capacities of the Russian army, the strategic stocks that Russia had. They are already using those. And the forecast that were voiced before the war did not come true. And one of the American generals said that they underestimated the determinants, the power, the willpower, and the skill of the Ukrainian soldiers. So they said it would have been enough to suppress Ukrainian air defense with just 100 missiles. Lukashenko continues to say that Ukraine was the first to attack. They are making these idiotic statements. We didn't want to show you this video, but we are going to make sure whether they are real people in this video, not something that has been added like the video with Putin and the flight attendants. So let's have a look and make sure that this meeting actually took place or whether it's been edited. We were not the first to attack. The armed forces of Ukraine started shooting 2 days prior. We were on a helicopter and we were reported about those preventative shots. And I will show you the place that would have been attacked in Belarus. And if we haven't done those preventive shots, they would have attacked our armed forces that were staying there for the training. So we were not the first to start this fighting. We have a clear conscience. They have the biological weapons, the largest nuclear power plants. Everything was ready to be blown up. You can see what is happening at Chernobyl. You asked me to give them the electricity and they refused. They deny our help. As I told you, we forcefully gave power supply to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, but they start to realize gradually what's what. And who is the one knowing the truth here? Had we not have done it the day before, be sure in several days there would be losses on our side. They prepared not just to attack Donbass, they also wanted to attack Belarus. And today, and I told you that yesterday, Vladimir Vladimirovich, those international mercenaries are walking along the Belarus border to Chernobyl nuclear power plant. They want to hit in the back of the Russian army. They want to hit those forces, the joint Belarus and Russia forces staying near the border, and they also want to have us involved and to have the western areas cleared. They are not as easy, and we will have to guess what they are going to do in Chernobyl. We don't need to explain why we are right. I see that some of our people are saying that we are wrong, but the consequences would have been much worse than even in the middle of the 20th century. It's the time for the opportunity. If we do everything correctly, in 6 months, by the end of the time, people will not even see what has happened as far as the economy is concerned. So it's the Ukrainians that are doing some sabotage at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. We were planning to invade Belarusian territory. We wanted to fight against the remaining joint Russian and Belarus forces. So we were just following this closely. I just sat closely to the screen. So the reactions of Putin are very interesting. He's constantly doing something with his legs. So we are going to invite a specialist who is knowledgeable in the body language, and we are going to analyze this piece. I first thought it was edited, but if you look closely, it appears to be authentic. But my question is, why doesn't he meet Shoigu? Why doesn't he meet his head of the general staff? With Macron, he stayed some 30 meters from the man, but with Lukashenko, they're sitting close to each other, so he's not expecting any threat. But what about COVID? Belarus did not get the vaccination campaign. So this video, 2 minutes and 30 seconds long, can be an example of the propaganda, how facts can be misconstrued and misinterpreted. He is saying that Ukrainians are the one to create issues at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and they had to do this preventative strike, and had they not attacked us, the losses would have been greater. So if Batka gets the money, I think they will be involved in more active action. If not, then maybe they won't be engaged. So their media are. So what our media is saying, the Russian invaders continue suffering losses. Our armed forces have liquidated a general mayor. I would say that this is an important target that has been destroyed, which once again proves there's no professional army of Russia, no second mightiest army in the world. When the commanders are in charge, it means that they are having issues with their middle link, which is good for us. We have the new Cossack drive from Arestovich. Let's show it to our viewers. This is not Kashpirovsky, but better. So the situation around Ukraine remains to be controlled by the armed forces and the government. The enemy has not advanced significantly, and any strikes were stopped by our Air Force. In north of Kyiv, there was a counterattack. Similar counterattacks happened in Kharkiv region. At night, our aviation struck the enemy, so to exact revenge, the enemy attacked the airfields in Lutsk, Ivano-Frankivsk, Dnipro, and other locations. It's an attempt to stop the activities of our aviation. But as we know how professional the Russian army is, the majority of their airstrike hit civilian targets, and in Dnipro it was a shoe factory and a multi-story building. We know who we are dealing with. Everything will be decided on the battlefield, and our armed forces will put an end to the aggression of Russia. And the losses of the enemy during the previous day: personnel 260 people, 18 tanks, 60 IFVs, 2 artillery systems, 2 air defense systems, 0 planes, 0 helicopters, and 32 military machines, military vehicles. But I have the information that at least 6 planes were down during the previous day. We believe in the armed forces, we believe in ourselves. wait for our next message. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to its heroes. We will be waiting for the next statement. And we have information about some cars allegedly driving along the streets of Lviv and Lviv region asking for the location of military objects. We're still checking this information because similar messages are circulating in Kryvyi Rih chats and groups, especially in homeowners associations chats and parental chats. So this may be a piece of fake news to incite some panic. So don't respond to it until we get proof from the national police. It may be somebody who is showing their own initiative, and yesterday I saw a person collecting money for some type of training, even though nobody needs this training. And if you know that that's a person who is actually doing this, just tell them to stop. This is very funny. So after the meeting between Putin and Lukashenko, who are manipulating everything, Russia wants to recognize Facebook and Meta as extremist companies, because as we reported today, Facebook has allowed Ukraine, Poland, Russia, Latvia, Estonia, and our neighboring countries. So Facebook has allowed for users from these countries to respond to messages from Russia expressing a violent position, and Ukrainians, Polish people are even allowed to call for the death of people. So the prosecutor's office of Russian Federation has announced that Meta is an extremist organization, and the General Prosecutor's Office is asking to limit access to Instagram, and they have already taken to court to acknowledge Meta as extremists. So they are just going by Orwell's playbook, but this may already be very positive. And I'm having recommendations on my YouTube page from Russian bloggers who are trying to say what is happening in Russia, but when I watch these videos, they're not saying anything specific. But there is another side to this coin. When they have Instagram and Facebook blocked, we will not be able to get through to them. I know that very many people are working on this front line. They are just trying to find Russian bloggers and sending them messages. They are telling them what is happening here, that the Russians who just are killing Ukrainians, sending them video and photos. But this is hard to achieve because you can convince one out of 100, but this is at least one of the opportunities to convey the truthful information to them. So it's Instagram, but also there is still access available to Telegram and Vkontakte. There are some issues about blocking it. People in Russia are still using VPNs. Our minister was reporting about some VPNs. Some people are even working from Czech Republic, but it's important to get to people inside the country as well. So they are saying that the Russian side of things, the Ukrainian side of things, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. No, the truth is that Russia has attacked Ukraine. So we have been reporting about the reinstatement of communication in Enerhodar, and the access has been reinstated for 70%. Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, Rivne, Sumy, Zaporizhzhia. So business is ready. They are working. They are trying to restore the connection for us so that people get not validated chat information, and Russians cannot spread fakes through the channels, through the TV towers that they are seizing. So Britain has imposed sanctions against more than 300 deputies of the Russian State Duma. That's probably all of them. So while our Ukrainian postal service employees are downing Russian planes, the others are restoring their operations, and now is a perfect opportunity to take the market because Rosetka delivery is not working. They had very many franchises, different entrepreneurs, so Укрпошта will be doing the delivery. Rosetka, Yeva, those were the main delivery services before the war. So I wanted to order a book. So those bookstores in the city center where we normally bought books were closed. So I wanted to order a book. I didn't know that the delivery was working, and now I know that we can use Укрпошта. We realized that because of the events caused to us by Russia, entrepreneurs are suffering difficulties, especially with logistics. So some people lost their entire logistics chains, supplies were interrupted, and we have a video piece about it. So how have the events affected local producers and local entrepreneurs? So we are still looking for this video piece.
Звертаюсь до бізнесу.
I'm addressing the business and those working, those who have evacuated to other regions. I'm asking you, if there's no danger, get your employees together and restore your work. Your help is necessary. This is the statement made by the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Denis Shmyhal. Even if there's no military action near your production facilities, there are enough problems created by the war. The factory in Kulikiv is making equipment for the disabled. They are working for the export, and the first issue that the company has faced with since the beginning of the war is the supply of the raw materials. So there were lines during the first week of the war, and the rest of the raw material was supplied from the center of Ukraine. 20% of the raw materials, 20-25% is under a question mark, and the international delivery prices have gone up. The turnover of the company reached 100 million hryvnias. The profits dropped by 20% because of the war, but not even these losses make the companies stop their activities. The supply chains will be established with foreign companies. We will get the foreign currency that the country needs badly. We will be paying salaries. We will be paying for the needs of the united communities and the country. So this is the economy of war. When we continue working as usual and the government creates convenient conditions, but there are several buts, not the economic, but the psychological. The war makes people leave Ukraine. So we were making a survey in the school class of my child, and the result was that 1/3 of the families left to some foreign countries. It's hard to say how many stores, cafes and restaurants are currently not working in Lviv, and those companies which were packed, the cafes which were packed, are now closed. So the company is not working, don't bring money to the budget, and these are salaries, these are pensions, this is the support of the municipal infrastructure. Foreign institutions are promising money, but these are promises that will cover a month's needs for our country. Economists says that one of the ways to come back is to restore the work, particularly in Lviv, where the danger is minimum, and we have more than 100,000 displaced people, and also the companies are traveling to Lviv. Over the past hour, we have received more than 20 requests for evacuations, and the Department of Economy is looking for conditions. So these are tea and coffee companies, plastic production. Of course, it will take several days to evacuate the production facilities. More than 200 companies from other regions have expressed their desire to work here, and the administrations are looking for premises. A Google form has been created to find out who is ready to sell or rent production facilities. So more than 50 entrepreneurs from different parts of Ukraine are ready to move to Lviv region, and our military administration is looking for facilities, and Stepan Kuzida said that they have found more than 20 premises, and 7 entrepreneurs have already examined the facilities, and the administration has urged our businesses who own warehouse facilities or production facilities to come forward and to approach the department. You can either rent them or share with those entrepreneurs coming to the city. If we speak about the specialization of those companies, so we have this company that is doing tea packaging, bulletproof vest production, plastic production. So they have large production facilities and 1,000 employees, and only 15% of those will be coming to Lviv. News from the Security Service of Ukraine: 2 Russian informers were detained in Donetsk region. Over the previous day, the Security Service conducted a number of serious operations. 2 saboteurs who were transferring information about the equipment and movements of the armed forces of Ukraine were detained in Severodonetsk. A spotter was detained in Luhansk region. 10 participants of the so-called LDPR formations were detained in Luhansk region. 3 locals were detained. They participated in propaganda activities of the Russian Federation, calling for Ukrainian soldiers to surrender to Russia. 2 people from Kirovohrad region were detained who were trying to make money on the pain of Ukrainians. So they collected photos of those wounded and started collecting money for the needs of those people and the needs of the Ukrainian military, and they were able to collect 20,000 people. The head of the national police published a video showing these people. So he thought are no not swear words that one could use to explain the activities of such people. When we have people that have been bombarded, wounded, there are those who are trying to make money on somebody's pain. So let's have a look. Several days ago, I put up a post for the collection of money for the armed forces of Ukraine, and I collected 20,000 hryvnias, which I spent on 2 mobile phones and my personal needs. I feel very sorry, and I promise to return all this money. So it's my boyfriend who used my page to collect money for unlawful needs. I promise that we will return the money, and we feel very sorry. On March the 1st, my daughter and I were hurt after the attack on Kyiv TV network. And I found out that there was an Instagram page that neither I nor my daughter know about, and that page was collecting money for the treatment of my daughter, and there were bank details on the page that none of us know about, and the same bank details were used to collect money for the needs of the military man. In 2 days, the Department of the National Police and the Department of Cyber Police of Kirovograd region were able to detain those people, and I would like to thank those who are doing their job during this awful time, protecting the people. I believe that Ukraine has been and will be a great and independent country. So people should have their hands cut off for things like that. They promise to return the money, but if you have the intention to do similar things, it won't be enough to return the money. You will have to be tried as criminals who try to make money off somebody's misery. Dmitro Maleev is saying, if you see that somebody is collecting money, don't just blindly send the money. You should know the target, you should know the person. So it's better to donate to Повертайся живим or to the official account of the National Bank of Ukraine, because you can ask for a report on how the money will be spent. So we know how the Ministry of Digital Policy is spending. So please don't fall for posts like that. Try to tune down your emotions and try and understand whether the money is necessary or not, so that it's not dispersed. Today I'm buying flour, the next day I'm buying thermal imaging equipment. If you want to help a military base, it's better to conduct them directly and ask them what they need. And even if it seems to you that you haven't helped in 3 days, don't feel ashamed. You shouldn't be offended by people, by volunteers, asking them for food for children. You are helping displaced persons and you're asking for help, and the organization tells you, we are sorry, but we are not helping with children's food. We are helping only the military men, and we are collecting money for bulletproof vests. You should be understanding.
Вона очолює одну із організацій благодійних в Америці, одна із найвідоміших IT-спеціалісток Сполучених Штатів Америки. Люба Шипович, вона має відношення до організації Разом for Ukraine, і в неї був просто пост, як би це сказати, вилив душі, бо разом for Ukraine взяло собі за мету збирати кошти лише на потреби військових. І коли до них звертаються за іншими потребами, вони змушені відмовляти. І дуже часто люди не розуміють, що організація займається тільки цільово військовими і на дітей не буде виділяти грошей, тому не ображайтеся, справді організації собі обирають певний шлях, на якому вони хочуть зробити максимально і не
pathway where they do their best and they don't really want to stretch themselves too thin. And with regard to multiple accounts, transfer some money or deposit some money here, it reminds me a story with one correspondence. Where did you get this information from? The source is trustworthy. Well, it's from my auntie, brother, sister-in-law. These are not really trusted sources of information unless you know for a fact that your brother-in-law is engaged in charity for the 85th Division, and you know that this account is trusted and verified, and whenever you transfer money, you need to indicate that this is for a specific purpose, because usually we have some mass efforts like let's put together some money, let's collect money for this and that. We need to be very cautious because people transferred some money to these two and then they turned out to be fraudsters. Well, you remember that I told you this story that people contributed about 1,000 for an automated gun, and even I wrote back that it was not possible, but unfortunately we still have stories like that. I would like to continue this topic. A nighttime post from Prosecutor General Ms. Venediktova, and I want to quote it. A bastard from Kharkiv on February the 25th receives a call from a person, and this bastard introduces himself as a Russian citizen and offers a reward amounting to 40,000 hryvnias for providing important information in electronic form on the coordinates of a critical infrastructure facility. This bastard from Kharkiv accepts the offer and receives the promised 40,000 hryvnias on a bank card. On March the 1st, the armed forces of the Russian Federation hit the coordinates provided by the bastard from Kharkiv. That's how the recruitment works. 40,000 hryvnias. This is the price of such bastards. So 40,000 hryvnias, this is the price that some Ukrainians assign to innocent lives, because if you destroy a bakery, then you deprive some people of food, and this is something that will have an enormous effect on the lives of many people, and only 40,000. The international community continues punishing the Ukrainian oligarchs for their complicity, because they financed the main terrorist of the planet, and so they have to assume some of the liability. Canada imposed sanctions against 5 Russian oligarchs, including Roman Abramovich, and they also imposed a ban on certain companies to receive defense equipment from Canada. This is something that was announced by Justin Trudeau in Warsaw. In general, 5 Russian citizens were unfortunate to make it on the sanctions list. Mr. Osmanov is there, Anna Pamfilova, Judge Morozova, and the head of the interior in the city of Khimka. You might ask why Canadian sanctions are important for Mr. Abramovich, because he has 28% of his assets there. So I think that it was a noble move on the part of Abramovich when he announced these sanctions against Abramovich and the entire company. He mentioned that the people working for Abramovich's company, 1,700 of them, would not be sanctioned. So it's only about Mr. Abramovich, so he will not be able to receive any profit from this company. Yevraz has some factories in Ukraine, in South Africa, and in the US. There are several owners there. Abramovich is one of the co-owners. And in the 20th of February, when there was talk of potential invasion, the value dropped by 700 million. But there's still a lot left. It's great that Mr. Zelensky signed a law on the confiscation of all Russian assets in Ukraine. So right now, all the property that belongs to the Russian Federation and its residents will be seized with grounds or without grounds. There's another good piece of news. It doesn't have anything to do with Ukraine. Arsenal has a good ranking, and Chelsea is ahead of them. It's a pity that Chelsea is not registered in Ukraine, but believe me, there are a lot of assets there in the form of football players. So potentially Arsenal can finish number 3 without multiple years of no awards. Finally, they will be in the Premier League. What is interesting that there's nothing more from the Belarusian media about this meeting. I mean, the oppositional mass media, because they always provide a second opinion in addition to the official opinion from Mr. Lukashenko. I keep refreshing and updating the page, but there's nothing from the Belarusian mass media. I would be interesting to find out what the response of the Belarusian society is, because on the one hand, they are trying to fight those people who try to destroy the railways. And since they continue doing so, it means that they're not really chased by the government. There's a message from the Ministry of Defense about a briefing from 3 Russian pilots, so we will be able to see their top-notch pilots who killed the Ukrainian military. But I don't really think that these are the right 3 pilots, because I don't really see this top-notch pilot from the photograph. But we will definitely prepare this video a little bit later. And now we have yet another video to show. We mentioned earlier that information on the Russian occupants killed by the Ukrainian military will be eventually communicated to the Russian mothers. I'm not really sure whether we can count on some sympathy or words of apologies, because the Russian society has been brainwashed. But there's a video clip publicized by the security service of Ukraine, Olena Glavyanska from Kremenchuk. She's a mother of the Russian pilot from the temporarily occupied Crimea, Alexei Holovansky. By the way, he's giving a press conference right now. So basically, these two things are happening in parallel. But let's have a look at the video clip of this mom. The security service of Ukraine is working with her and the counterintelligence unit as well. But she has already recorded her video address, and she apologized to the Ukrainians for having raised a bad son. I live in Kremenchuk, Poltava region, and my son joined the Primorske aviation located on the territory of the Crimea occupied by the Russian Federation. On March the 5th, he received an order from the Russian Federation, and he received a mission. He was shot down by the Ukrainian armed forces, and he was taken into captivity. I found out about it from the mass media. I feel really ashamed for my son. I've heard multiple air raid alerts, and I could not even think that my son was one of the perpetrators and criminals. Of course, I'm really worried about my son. He is in captivity right now, but he is alive. I want to apologize to the Ukrainian people. And I want to ask on my personal behalf, and I want to ask on behalf of my son, I'm really sorry that I was not able to raise a
Повертаємось у прямий ефір.
person with
Нас
integrity.
новин дізналася про те,
We are
що
back
він
at the
потрапив у
studio.
полон.
So she found
Було
out
лише
about
повідомлення, що не
him
тільки в неї, що
being
є ще
taken into
одного
captivity from the news.
льотчика і російської авіації. Тут
Not
родина,
only
і є
this
перший
guy, but
шифрований
another
зв'язок з
Russian
конференцією
pilot
на
has some
даний
family
який на
members
даний
here.
момент триває. Полонений
This
красмайор
briefing
Олексій
that we
Головецький, про
referenced
якого йдеться, командир
earlier
російської
is
авіаційної
still
ескадрилі,
ongoing.
вильот із
Alexei
захисного з
Holovatsky,
аеродрому Саки
a
в Криму,
major,
здійснив 7
he
вильотів, займався розвідкою
was
для
flying
виявлення
from
та
an
знищення сил
airfield in the
протиповітряної
Crimea.
оборони та військових
He made
об'єктів. Під час
7
останнього
flights,
вильоту був
and his
збитий у
task
Миколаївській
was
області та
to
потрапив у полон.
carry out some
Головенський,
reconnaissance, and
вибачився
during
перед
the last
українцями.
flight,
Цими за
he was
свої
shot
дії та
down
закликав
and
своїх
taken
колег не
into
виконувати
captivity. He
злочинних
apologized
наказів
for his actions, and
і
he called
припинити бойові
upon
дії.
his colleagues
Майор окремо
not
підкреслив, що
to
перебуває
fulfill
у полоні вже 7
nefarious
днів, з ним
orders.
добре поводяться, надали
He's
медичну
been
допомогу
in
та
captivity for 7 days.
розмовляють російською мовою, що
He has
спростовує
been
тези
treated
російської пропаганди. Раз ми
well,
згадали про
and
Миколаїв,
he
то
speaks
там,
Russian, and it
як це
debunks
Краш Тім заявив,
the
що
myths
до
of the Russian
17 березня
Federation.
хочуть росіяни провести ротацію, оскільки зазнали великих втрат, там і полонені
And
були.
we
Їм
have
не
some
вдається
information that
оточити
the Russian
Миколаїв.
Federation
Річка заважає
wants to
морські
have a
розвідні,
rotation by the
отримують звідний
17th of
відсіч,
March
фактично
because
кожної
they
ночі
incurred
знищується як техніка,
multiple
так і жива
losses.
сила
They
росіян, і
did
підмога, яка
suffer
нібито прибуває
enormous losses
з
in the
Криму, не
vicinity of
допомагає через те,
Mykolaiv,
що, умовно ж, ті ж самі
and
вертольоти,
support
вони
from the
мусять або
Crimea
мати
is not
перевалочну
really
базу, яку ми
helpful because
знищили,
the helicopters
ось і знищили
need
30
to have
вертольотів,
a
або зменшують
transit
кількість боєкомплектів,
helipad,
прилітати,
but we
відповідно, це
destroyed
теж
it.
не
Or
дає бажаного для них
you need to have
результату і
some
ефекту.
additional resources. So
Цим
right now,
льотчикам
they
шляху
have not
назад
been able
немає.
to achieve desirable
І
effects.
в
But
Україні
there's no
шляху
way back
немає.
with
В
these
Росія
pilots,
любить
right?
немає вже
And
Криму чи
they
Україні,
cannot
я маю на увазі
really do
з
anything
того,
here in
що він там
Ukraine, and they cannot
прилітав
really
з
be
тих
back
територій.
in
Росія
the
його просто
Crimea.
знищить, якщо він
I
помре.
think that if
Я
he
не
ever
думаю,
goes
Росія
back,
специфічно ставиться до своїх
Russia will
військовослужбовців.
just
Вони можуть сказати,
annihilate
що їх
him.
змусили це
Well, I think
сказати,
that
що це все
Russia
під
has a
тиском,
very
хоча ви
specific
можете прийняти
attitude
відео
towards
українського
their
пілота, який
military.
потрапив у
They can
полон,
always
яку є
say
різкість, він
that
там будь-хто адекватний
he
зрозуміє,
was
що
under
це
the
було під
pressure.
тиском.
But if
І
we
не здивуюся,
compare
якщо
the
там
press
хтось стояв автоматчик
conference given
за
by the
камерою. Ось. І тут, коли їм
Ukrainian
дають нормально
prisoner of
сказати,
war, it
але
was
треба, що Росія
obvious
любить
that he
зрадників,
did that
хоча
at
всі
gunpoint.
військовослужбовці, які в Криму були,
Russia
їм ставили
loves
позначки схильні до
traitors,
зради, їм
and
давали
you can
мінімум
even have
можливості
this
просуватися.
label
Я думаю, по службі
susceptible to
ось їх
betrayal.
відправляли до чорта на
And
роги служити.
usually
Ось
they
подальше,
are
хоча обіцяли спершу в
deployed
Криму.
in some
І я не здивуюся, що
far-flung
однією з мотивацій
regions,
бомбити
and I
Україну,
will not
воювати
be
було те, що
surprised
от підете,
if
що ви
one
готові,
of
що
the
все добре, вам
motivating
дадуть
factors
звання,
was
ось, і
to
ветеранку так звану, тому що
receive
в
this
кожному
pardon from
переходженні
the
через
Russian
росіян чути, от
government.
ветеранка заробив, ура.
Because
Заробив, вирішився без
maybe
2
if
ніг.
they were
Прекрасно,
told that if they
прекрасно для
perform
тебе,
this order,
будь-якого
they will be able to
будь-якого
retire. Well, maybe
військовослужбовця
you will not really have
альтернатива.
any limbs left, but it's
Пам'ятаєш, ми з
still
тобою про
a
золото
good
говорили.
alternative. Remember,
Для
we
росіян
talked
вже
about
нарізати.
gold.
Так от, Україна шукає можливості
Ukraine
отримати заморожені
is
кошти Центробанку
looking
Російської
for
Федерації.
obtaining the
Наше
frozen
Міністерство
funds
економіки
of the
пропрацьовує
Central
механізми
Bank of the
спільно з
Russian
урядами
Federation.
двох країн.
Our
Йдеться про
national bank is
415
working on that
мільярдів
together with the
арештованих
governments of other countries, 415 billion
Російської Федерації.
in
Про
gold
ці
from the Central
домовленості і
Bank of the
механізми,
Russian
які шукає
Federation.
Україна з іншими державами,
These
заявив заступник
agreements
міністра
and the
економіки Денис Кудін.
mechanisms in question
Каже він,
were
що вже ці кошти арештовані,
communicated by
і,
Denis
по суті,
Kudin. He
цих
mentioned
коштів
that these
достатньо,
funds
щоб
have already
перекрити
been
прямі
seized,
єдиноразові
and
втрати.
these
Йдеться про
funds
те, що
will
за
be
ці гроші
sufficient
можна би
to
було
cover
почати якесь
one-off
відновлення
direct
і виплатити людям
expenses.
компенсації,
So
які
that money
залишилися
can
без
be
житла,
used to
які втратили
launch
інші
the
речі і
restoration
так далі.
efforts and to
415
compensate those
мільярдів
people
доларів.
who've lost their homes and some other
Хороша сума,
belongings.
так? Це Європейський
415
Союз ще
billion
22 лютого
USD.
запровадив новий пакет санкцій,
On
відповідно
the
до якого
27th of February,
блокує
the European
операції,
Union
пов'язані з
introduced a new
управлінням
package of
резервами Центрального
sanctions.
банку Російської
And
Федерації. Після
as per these
ЄСу
sanctions,
до цих
some
країн
of
ще
the
і США
assets of the
приєдналися,
central
і
bank were
Японія,
frozen
і
after the EU,
навіть не
the US
Швейцарія.
joined, Japan, and even
Кілька днів
neutral
тому ми
Switzerland.
повідомляли, що втрати
Several
України,
days
знищена
ago,
інфраструктура
we
вже
informed that the value of the destroyed infrastructure amounts to 100 billion. We also should factor in some other losses. Another prisoner of war, Russian pilot,
Олексій Козлов заявив, що
Alexei Kozlov, and he announced that he received an order on February the 23rd, and his task was to destroy the elements of air defense, support the ground forces, and also support the landing of airborne troops. On the 5th of March, he was shot down. The management used the pilots as a bait because they used these pilots to identify the air defense system of Ukraine. He also apologized to the Ukrainian people, especially to those people who lost their dear ones and suffered some losses. He also encouraged his co-citizens not to perform any orders, but unlike the Belarusians, the Russians are afraid of 7 years in prison, so they continue performing Putin's nefarious orders and Shoigu's nefarious orders. We have some important information for people crossing the border. Yesterday, we talked with Mr. Chemaris about COVID. This COVID ostensibly vanished into thin air, but it still exists. And as for data, we still have about 6,500 people in hospitals. Most of them still require oxygen, so this problem has not dissipated. We still have it. We just shifted our focus to different problems. Some countries where Ukrainians are fleeing require COVID-19 vaccination certificate. Therefore, Lviv Regional Military Administration put together a list of vaccination facilities for those people who want to get vaccinated. And these vaccination facilities were deployed along the border. So you can see information about Hrushiv, a hospital in Nemiriv, Krakovets, outpatient facility in Krakovets, Shuhavich Square 1, or there's also an outpatient facility in the village of Nakonechne. If you are moving in the direction of Ravaruska, you can get vaccinated in the polyclinic of Ravaruskiv. If you want to cross the border via Smilnitsa, there's an outpatient facility in the village of Sarava, or an outpatient facility in the village of Khiriv. And if you are heading towards Ukrainiv, there is an outpatient facility in the village of Savchin or in the village of Varyash. Let us remind you that as per the data of the Lviv Regional Military Administration, you can get your second or booster dose of the vaccine because we already have some confirmed information that certain countries where refugees are heading require vaccination certificates. Mr. Reznikov, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, addressed the Belarusian people. He said that according to our information from intelligence confirmed by the Ministry of Defense, the Republic of Belarus is planning to assault those settlements that are located on the Ukraine-Belarus border. Kopane, Stolinsky district, Brest region. So this is the continuation of Lukashenko's statement that he has some maps and things like that. So, and they want to set it up as a provocation. So it's yet another provocation from the Russian Federation to justify the entry of the Belarusian troops on the territory of Ukraine, but there's nothing to enter because vehicles break down, and Belarus doesn't really have any effective combat units. It's one thing to put up a show at training grounds, but it's a different thing to fight in reality. So if the Russian Federation is conducting itself like this, so I don't even know what to expect from Belarus and their vehicles. I am monitoring my computer because I have already mentioned that our Polish friends are watching us closely. They've been very helpful. They provide us with humanitarian aid. We mentioned the bio toilets that they provided, which was very important in the first couple of days of the war. And Ukrainians, when they find themselves in a foreign country, are in need of first psychological help. If you are in Warsaw and you need some psychological support, you can go to a church on Medova Street. There is a professional there who is ready to provide such psychological support for free. Warsaw, Medova Street, there is a Basilian church there. And another update from abroad, it's an update from the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. They inform that Estonia is ready to provide support for children and young people who come to them. So if Ukrainians come to Estonia, they can go to a kindergarten there, 1.5 to 7 years of age. Children can also go to secondary school from 7 to 17 years, high schools, BET schools, universities, and out-of-schools institutions, all sorts of extracurricular clubs, interest clubs. There are also youth centers and organizations that young people can join. So if you are heading towards Estonia and you want to know how to enroll in a school or kindergarten, go to the website of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. They have all the details there, and you will be able to find the details. If you are going to Estonia, you can also find information in the Ukrainian community of Estonia. We have several organizations, and all the contacts can be found on the Facebook page of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. The first convoy of humanitarian and evacuation buses have already arrived in Zaporizhia. I just want to remind everyone that humanitarian aid was forwarded to Enerhodar, and we are still waiting for the confirmation of their arrival. Maxim Kryshtop, another Russian pilot, stated that he made 3 flights on the territory of Ukraine. His third combat flight took place on March the 4th, and he had a lot of tons of non-fragmentation bomb. When he was flying over Ukraine, he realized that his mission was not reconnaissance. Later, he was shot down and he was taken into captivity by the National Guard. So he confirmed once again that they know what they hit. They have enough time to see that their targets are not military facilities. As per the statutes of different armed forces of Ukraine, if an order is illegal, you have the right not to perform it. You just need to notify your commander about it. But they continue pounding even when they know that their targets include women, children, and the elderly. I'm a little bit confused. I mean, how can he know how many bombs he has on board? And how can he kill civilians? I mean, he has a wife or he has children, or at least he has some family members because someone gave birth to him. So this person did that purposely. But this pilot can say no to that order, and he can just land and surrender. Yes, they can do that, but they don't want to do that. And these planes have a laser targeting system, but they have not received any orders to use such system, and so they just use non-guided ammunition. So they understand that they don't really have high precision ammunitions. They are well aware of the fact that they are pounding peaceful civilians. Well, this information doesn't sound encouraging. I feel quite dispirited. Well, I can't really comprehend it. It's over my head. So you have a person who comprehends the adverse consequences of their actions, and they still do that even though they can say no to this nefarious order. They're afraid, they're driven by fear. I think they cannot really understand themselves what they're afraid of. But let's talk about our heroes. The National Guard of Ukraine writes 102 military service members received governmental awards together with the territorial defense and the armed forces of Ukraine. The National Guard has been defending our cities, destroying the Russian occupants, their vehicles and equipment, and destroying the military equipment that was used to decimate our cities. 102 military service members were awarded. There are several examples. I will not really articulate the entire list because it's too long. On February the 24th, the National Guard officers engaged in a fight when the Russian paratroopers landed in the Hostomel airport. They put up a robust resistance. They shot down 3 helicopters, K-52 and 34, and another helicopter was shot down a little bit later, and these officers defended 100 critical infrastructure facilities. During the defense of the city of Enerhodar and Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, the National Guard decimated 2 tanks and armored vehicles because they were moving towards the nuclear power station. The National Guard officers also provided support during the evacuation from the eastern parts of our country. I also have a positive piece of news. The Lviv Territorial Defense Unit created their own hymn, their own anthem. We will show it. This part of our live air is coming to an end. We will be back at 6 p.m. At 6 p.m., the Europe-Ukraine Forum will be initiated at the Lviv Regional Military Administration. The municipality representatives will be present there, the regional representatives, some MPs, regional councillors, and the European Parliament members as well. We will be following that event. You will be able to see it live. Our journalists and staff members will be broadcasting it, so we will be back here at 6 p.m. and we will see what is of interest at that forum. And after the forum, we will be back at the studio. And now we will listen to the anthem of the Lviv Territorial Defense Unit. So stay with us, and we will see you back here in the studio in 2 hours.
Існує планета у півночі тьмяній, лев загарчить на гербі. Богові душу, серце кохані, честь залишаєм собі. Богові душу, серце кохані, честь залишаєм собі. Конфлікт, компроміси, хай вічне повстання, буяння в серцевій пальбі.